Well, earlier this week, as Jen and I were talking with Pastor Chris about the theme of today's sermon, and social action was mentioned, civic duty, I shared with Chris that earlier that week, I'd been working on an issue of particular importance to me and my family. And for many, the degree to which we are called to action is proportionate to how we are personally impacted by a particular issue. So bear with me for a few moments as I tell you about a social action, civic duty issue that impacted our family and continues to impact thousands of lives each year, regardless of your political affiliation. The issue is drunk or drug driving. It's an issue that can impact any one of us today as we leave this building or as we drive down any roadway. Oops. Our 20-year-old son, Chris, was killed in 2005. He was riding with a friend in a high-performance GTO. That's the car. The driver was Sean, a good friend of Chris, and he was highly impaired by alcohol and marijuana. On the drive to our home, Chris chose to tell Chris and three other passengers in the car that he was going to show them what the car could do. He accelerated to a speed of over 100 miles an hour, lost control of the car, and crashed into a large tree. Chris was in the front passenger seat. One of the passengers escaped from the car and called our home and said, "You need to come quickly. Chris has been hurt very bad." The crash was only a few miles from our home, so Jen and I hurriedly loaded up into our car and headed over to the crash site. At the crash scene, there were EMTs working over Chris's body. Those images will never go away. The Lifeline helicopter that came to get Chris, the emergency room surgeries, those are memories forever etched in our memory banks. Chris died 17 hours after that crash, and I made a vow while we were sitting with Chris holding his hand. I had to do something. Fast forward to just a few weeks, Jen and I met with Sean and his family, and they wanted to do something to honor Chris's memory. I asked Sean if he would be willing to create a video, and in that video, he would describe the events leading up to the crash, what it was like to be responsible for the death of a friend, and what it was like to be facing several years of incarceration. Sean agreed, and his family hired a video production company. They were going to create the video in the fashion that we described. A few months later, just before Sean was sentenced to 3 years of incarceration, a video titled "Regret" was completed. With a few copies of the video in hand, I set out to see if I could find groups that might utilize the video in order to help others better understand the dangers and consequences of impaired driving. Thanks to local media, thanks to the help of Mothers Against Drunk Driving, thanks to the Indiana Governor's Commission for a Drug-Free Indiana, and many others, more than 200 copies of the video were immediately ordered and distributed throughout the state. Over the next 8 or 9 years, I was asked to personally present the video to more than 160 locations. My motivation? The feedback from the kids, from the adults, was extremely positive and encouraging. Some viewers emailed me and later told me how it had changed their lives. Now, here's where I try to connect the dots to the sermon today. In 1980, 28,000 folks in the U.S. lost their lives to drunk driving. Thanks to the efforts of MAD and all those other organizations that were involved, in 2020, the number of fatalities was reduced to a little less than 12,000. This past fall, a bipartisan Congress passed the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Bipartisan Congress. Doesn't happen very often. Included in the transportation section of that legislation was something called the HALT Act. The HALT Act gives auto manufacturers 3 years to determine what technology is best suited to detect impairment, drowsiness, and driver inattention. Once that's determined, this technology would become standard equipment in all new cars, just like airbags, backup cameras, and seatbelts. MAD, the National Safety Council, and many others were thrilled with this new legislation, totally thrilled. It's estimated that it will save more than 9,400 lives the first year it's implemented. Now here's the bad news. About 1 week ago, Senator Mike Rounds of South Dakota introduced Senate Bill 4647 that would repeal the HALT Act. The bill was co-sponsored by none other than Texas Senator John Cornyn and Indiana Senator Mike Braun. Matt has attempted to find out why the senators are in favor of repealing the HALT Act. I have made 3 attempts to contact Senator Cornyn to find out why he is in favor or has co-sponsored this, but no response. I'm lost for words as to why the senators want to repeal this new legislation. If it's to avoid the cost of adding this technology to the bottom line of new automobiles, it's a pittance compared to the economic costs of impaired driving. MAD estimates that impaired driving costs our nation $132 billion each year. I can tell you that the medical costs, insurance costs, and legal costs related to the death of our son approach nearly $1 million. That would pay for a lot of technology. So why am I telling you this? Because you've not heard it in the news. Our senators have not openly debated it. What motivation do they really have to replace something that will save lives and reduce the economic loss to our society? Now today, inside your worship, order of worship, you probably have noticed there's a little QR code. Thanks, Chris, for inserting that. If you take your cell phone camera and put the camera on and capture that QR code, it'll take you to a secure MAD website that makes it very, very easy. All you have to do is, I think, type in your zip code, and it will send a letter to Senator Cornyn asking him why he is in favor of repealing the HALT Act. So here he is. This is your invitation. It's easy. It's social action. It impacts everybody's lives. I thank you for listening.
We're going to do the offertory in a moment, but I just wanted to say thank you so much to you, Steve, and to Steve and Jen for all the work that they've done. And this was an opportunity to share something important with important people that we just couldn't pass up, because this is a primary example of how we don't have to be alone. Our voices, one voice doesn't make much difference, but let's say everybody in the sanctuary does it, and then you hand your program to a friend and they do it, and et cetera, and let's just keep on going. Let's just make them answer us. All right. You bet.